Today, we have another special guest for you, Catie Harris of NursePreneurs. We're going to talk about what a mastermind is and how being part of one can help you start and grow your own business, how Walmart was a salvage point for her in her nursing career, how starting her own podcast opened her eyes to all the amazing nurse business owners that are out there, and why you need to have a passion to solve a problem to be successful in entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Stay at Home Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Cooper Gillingham. For over 25 years, I've strived to use my nurse credentials to find work that fit my lifestyle. Whether it was raising my 4 children and 3 fur babies, traveling the world, or moving to Mexico and living on the Caribbean Sea. Sometimes I succeeded and sometimes I failed, but I always learned from the experience. Now, I want to help you by sharing what worked and what didn't work. There are so many opportunities out there for nurses today. The Stay at Home Nurse Podcast will inspire and equip you to have a nursing career that is meaningful and supports your lifestyle. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today we have a special guest with us, Catie Harris from NursePreneurs. Hi, Catie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about you? What do you do? And who do you do it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the owner CEO of NursePreneurs, and it's a business that we created to help empower nurses to start their own business. Yeah, so that's the gist of it, really. But it's been a really great and exciting journey, really, of a business. So, yeah, and then I still do academics and work with nurse practitioner students.
How did you start in your nursing career? Did you do the traditional path?
I did, yeah. So I started out in Neuro in down South Texas, and really just it kind of precipitated. I started a brand basically in Neuro without realizing it because I was working Neuro, and then I could only get Neuro positions, and then I moved to the Neuro ICU, and then the neurosurgeons wanted to work with me when I was a nurse practitioner, and then since I only knew Neuro when I went for my PhD, I did a Neuro dissertation. So it was just like.
So it sounds like it was one of those things where you kind of fell into something and then it just kind of took on a life of its own. And before you knew it, you were the expert at neuro.
Yeah. And it was actually a really great lesson because, it was one of those things that I'd always said that I wasn't going to do neuro. And I ended up, my first position was neuro. And that's just, so when you have an expertise like that, and most nurses don't like neuro because it's
hard.
A tough learning curve. Yeah. And the neurosurgeons aren't the most fun. Yeah. So they don't like being in that space. So I kept getting placed in that space over and over again because I had the experience and I wasn't afraid to go to neuro. And then it just became a comfort zone.
So tell us a little bit. I noticed that you have quite a few degrees. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, it was one of those things that I always just wanted to know what was next and always felt like there was some knowledge that I didn't have or something like I needed to be validated somehow. So I got my BSN to start with, and pretty quickly after that, I decided that I needed an MBA for whatever reason. And so I spent several years doing the prereqs and in getting that degree. And then when I finished with it, I realized, here I am 6 or 7 years into nursing. I'm making a really great salary, working just agency for all these neuro hospitals. And if I wanted to start with my MBA, I'd have to start over at the beginning. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that. So I'm like, well, let me just go to get my master's degree because now I'm really in with the neurosurgeons and they want me to be a nurse practitioner. So that's what I ended up doing. And I got the nurse practitioner and, it was great in the beginning, like the learning curve again was just really steep. And I just loved the growing and the learning aspect of something new. But pretty quickly, like I hit a ceiling, if you will, with the growth. And it got to a point where I grew up with these residents. I knew them as interns, and then, 7 years later, they're graduating and they're moving on, and I'm still reporting to the intern. And it was just really, really frustrating. And during that time, I'd been doing my PhD. So now my residents had graduated, moved on, became attendings, and here I am with a PhD reporting to an intern I don't know, and trying to validate myself again with this intern, to prove my worth. And I was like, how is this possible that I have all these degrees. Plus, I got another couple of masters along the way just because. So, I have all these degrees, and here I am reporting to the intern, and my residents have moved on, and I'm still like running around with a chicken with my head cut off, trying to solve problems and put out fires. And I really felt like I was spinning my wheels at that point.
So let's kind of go back and revisit a few of these things. You've mentioned several degrees in there, and you were working full time while you got each of these degrees?
Always, always, yeah. I'm like, even when I was younger, I used to have I would have 3 or 4 jobs. I was used to be addicted to applying for jobs, and I would never give any of them up. I would just had a lot of jobs always.
That's funny. I've done that. I always had a hard time leaving places. So I would go PRN
Yes.
instead of leaving because
Yeah.
I just can't say goodbye. So if I just went PRN, and then before you know it, you're PRN at 2 or 3 different places plus working full time.
Yes.
And the hard part is when you have to do your competencies at all these different places. I was finding that I was spending so much time going from one place to another just to keep my competencies up on top of trying to work all of these jobs. And it was like a juggling act of trying to figure out just when you thought you had them all done, it was time to start all over again for the next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing that I eventually figured out was just mathematically, because I worked constantly. My parents would be like, "Where have you been? What do you mean?" I forgot. I haven't talked to you in a couple of months. But it was every single day I was working, and you start to just get accustomed to that income, and it was no longer fun money or extra money. It was like my living money. Like if I didn't work and I didn't just work like one 12-hour shift. And this is probably not something I should say, but I would do a 12-hour, then go to my 12-hour night shift, and then go to my 12-hour day shift, and then take, the day off. So it was just like this constant thing. And I did the math on that. And, the way it worked out, like if I worked every single day, every shift for 365 days, which is not physically possible, the income on that still wasn't all that great, even including overtime and halftime or double time or whatever. Like you barely break 200,000, and it sounds exciting, but it comes at the cost of having no friends, no time off, no sleep, no holidays, just your whole life.
So was that kind of the breaking point for you where you said, I have to do something different?
Yeah, that was part of it. And it was all kind of wrapped into, me getting into not a fight with an intern, because I fought with the intern all the time, but a fight with my attending, where I just ended up in, they reported me for cursing him out basically. And they sent me to anger management classes. So I was sitting in this dingy room in anger management classes. And here I am with a PhD, 3 masters and an MBA. And I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. So I just, I'm like, this is not how I saw my life going. And this is not what I wanted for myself. And there's something seriously wrong here that I need to look at.
I think it's just very interesting that you say that, because for me, myself, that was something that happened when I used to love going in, and I worked in labor and delivery. That was my favorite. That was the thing that I always thought I was meant to do. And when I first started, I would go in and look at the board, and I'd be so excited to see that I had a labor patient. And I was so excited. And then a couple years later, when I would go in, and I was like praying on the way in, please don't let me have a labor patient, please. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? What has changed? And, at some point you have to just, and I hear about the nurse burnout and the moral injury and all the different, no matter what you call it, when you realize that something needs to change, it's not that when you're not the person that you are, and I'm sure you're not the type of person that needs anger management, but when it pulls you to that point where you're not the person that you are anymore, a lot of people blame it on the career, and it can be the career, but both of us have managed to stay within nursing and just find something else to do instead of giving up. And it was always a joke when I worked in labor delivery. Everybody said, we're going to go be a Walmart greeter. And so instead of that's an extreme. And so we don't want to go from nursing to being a Walmart greeter. So what did you do? How did you save yourself?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because Walmart actually did call me. Not to be a greeter, but that was the family joke, because my brother would be like, "Oh, there's a cleanup in aisle 3." I'm like, so I worked for a corporate Walmart as the senior manager for talent acquisition to recruit nurse practitioners into the clinic that they had down south, and that was actually a salvaging point, because the truth is that I would love to say that after my anger management classes that I was like, I've had it and, went off and made lots of money. And that's not what happened at all. I spent the next couple of years just kind of drifting from, unit to unit. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I should just change services. Maybe it's the people, or maybe I'll change the hospital and I'll go, to this other hospital and see if that works out. And it worked for like, I think the learning curve at that point for me was like maybe 2 months. Like it took me 2 months to get comfortable somewhere. And then like, all right, I'm bored again. So when Walmart called and wanted to do this, I was like, oh yeah, let me try doing that. And it was a completely different role. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what the job was when I signed up for it. They just were like, do you want to do it? And I said, yes. And so I started buying books on like, I don't even know what talent acquisition means. Like, what is this job that I just said yes to? So I bought all these books on recruiting and hiring and that kind of stuff, and just figured it out. But I loved that whole role. And then I started meeting these nurses. So I would go to the AANP leadership meetings, and I went to the Global Nurse Leader Institute in Geneva, Switzerland, and met the leaders over there. And I was like, there's a lot of nurses who are out there that are doing amazing, amazing stuff. And I feel like I've been in a bubble. Like, why am I not out here doing stuff like working for the WHO or consulting, or, just there's so many things that I could do. And I've chosen to just stay in my safe little place in the hospital down the street from where I live. And, it was kind of an eye opener. So when I got to the point where it's somewhat bored with the Walmart position and they were cutting senior management anyway, it really gave me the release to go do something different, something that I've wanted to do and something that I've always been passionate about.
And is that when you started your business?
It is, yeah. So I started Concierge Nurse Services, and I've had several businesses before that. And I started just kind of neighborhood mastermind, if you will, and was helping other nurses to start their businesses in kind of our Philadelphia area. So I was helping several of my students at the time, my nurse practitioner students who were interested in starting businesses, and some of the other nurses on the unit. So we did IV hydration, we did an NCLEX business, we had PICC line business. So there were all these different things that we were doing, and it was so much fun. And what I loved about it was that constant learning curve. Like, I don't know everything. I don't know every business, but it's a journey, and it's really exciting. And, I can have all these ideas being generated constantly because I'm working with such a varied and diverse group of nurses, and they're all doing something different, which is really cool for me.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when you get around all these other people. I think the people that you hang around really, when you're in the hospital and everybody's grumbling about, the shifts and, oh, I have to work Christmas again, or I didn't get the weekend off. And you're kind of stuck in the mentality and you think that's all there is. And then you get out on the other side and you look back at that and you're like, wow, the nurses can do anything. We really can. We have the skill set and we really can do anything that we put our minds to. And so when you start getting around nurses who are like that are saying, oh, I'm going to start my own business, and it makes your mind kind of expand to the possibilities that are out there. But I think also there's something being said about trying to find those other nurses. So is that why you started your NursePreneurs?
Yeah, it is, because, when I started my business, I was just kind of like, oh, I'm the only nurse who started a business, like this is me in a bubble again. And then I'm looking around and I'm like, no, there's like hundreds of other nurses. It's just that there was no kind of like one place where they were all housed. So I'm like, I want to know who these people are, and I want to know just how they got started, what was their background and that kind of stuff. So I started doing interviews, and that's when I started my podcast. And that just really opened my eyes to the amazing things that nurses are doing. And it really just kind of gave a forum to have role models and be inspired by their stories, and to hear that it didn't just happen overnight. And they didn't decide yesterday at lunch they were going to open a business and the next day money started coming in. And it just, it's a long road. It's a tough journey, and but it's so rewarding.
Yeah, it is. I always laugh when I see the courses advertised. And I think, nurses were kind of like in our own bubble, but when you get into the online and the entrepreneurial world, there's all of these advertisements that are always out there saying, take this course and start your business and start making money in 30 days or 90 days or whatever. And I always laugh, and I was like, why? At first I felt like, why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? Why am I not making $1 million and retiring in the first 30 days after taking your course? I like to hear the real stories about how it really does take a lot of time and a lot of commitment. And the first time something fails, that doesn't mean that you just give up and say, well, it didn't work. It just means no, that you have to change something. You do something a little bit differently and keep going. So right now, I know you have the podcast and I know you have a Facebook group, right?
Yes.
Anything else that you have going on?
So I have our mastermind groups, and one of the, I went down that path of, let me become a millionaire in 30 days or less or something, whatever. And I'm so tired of that advertising, I'm like, I am not doing that. But it's highly effective. But yeah, so I went down that path and really just wanted to, figure out what was wrong with me, why I couldn't make $1 million in 30 days like everybody else. But, it's really just kind of a marketing myth and lie and that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you have everything in place, if you do this one thing, then it could make the difference for your business. But if you don't have that one thing in place, it's just one more piece of the puzzle that isn't all put together. And so that's what I really wanted to have. And so in my mastermind, I created that space for us to just talk about what it is that we're doing and make sure that it's a full picture and not just kind of like we're throwing marketing pieces together and we're doing this and that and the other thing. And I certainly have people in the group that are trying to do way too much stuff, but always trying to like keep them on path. And I think that having a group like that is really important, and just being able to talk about what it is that you're doing and how to stay focused. So yeah, those are the main things. So the podcast, the Facebook group, which is very large at this point, and then just kind of my inner network, if you will, which is much smaller and more intimate and much more tightly connected, if you will.
And we were talking a little bit beforehand. So to be part of the mastermind, you have to be pretty serious. It's not for somebody who thinks that they might want to do a business and doesn't know really if they are committed or not. This is for people that are pretty committed to starting a business and actually growing a business as a nurse.
Yeah, and I always do phone calls with people beforehand, and I've turned people away or told them, if I can't help you, then I send you to somebody who can. And I just had a conversation like that earlier today, because I think it's important to be with somebody that has done what it is that you want to do, or have access to somebody that has done what you want to do. And one of the things that I get sometimes is the nurses want to know how they can make money really fast, which to me is a big red flag. And, I'm like, oh, maybe you should check out so-and-so because they're really good at that. But entrepreneurialism is about having a passion for finding a problem, right? And then you believe that if you invest enough time and money in yourself to solve the problem, then you'll make money. So if you can get a nurse that has that philosophy, then I can do something with her. If you are just looking for the next thing that'll make you rich and you're chasing money, then that's a much harder thing to do. And honestly, like we were talking about people that have not sure what their idea is, and then people that are super sure what their idea is. And I have some of these focus masterminds where we do IV hydration or cannabis, LNC, like they're smaller, more very, very focused on one business type. And I think the nurses see that and say, oh, cannabis consulting, that's easy. I can make money that way. Or IV hydration, I can make money that way. But the process is the same, and you're still solving a problem. And if that's not what you want, then a slam dunk idea is not going to work, because you have to put the time and energy into marketing, and the marketing is about connecting with people, getting out there and letting people know what you do to solve the problem. So for me, in a lot of ways, it's easier to take somebody that has a passion for problems and solutions, but no idea what they want to do, as opposed to some of these other people that are just chasing money because they think it looks easier in IV hydration to make money.
Yeah, I see that a lot with the cannabis right now, where and anytime I see something that says join us and you're guaranteed to do this, there's no guarantees. And so I 100% agree with a lot of things that you said. First of all, the following somebody who's already done what you've done. I've had a lot of people come to me wanting, because I've started a successful business, but everything I've done is online. I could not tell you how to deal with regulations of opening a brick and mortar place. And I don't want to, and I don't want to learn it. And, my specialty is case management, and people will ask me, well, how do I start my own independent case management company? I'm like, there are other people that can teach you that. That's not my space, because that's not what I've done. I've done more of the online business type of thing. And I 100% agree. You have to find somebody who's done not exactly what you're doing, but something very similar to it. And not just saying, because I've done this, I can do everything. And I do see some of that out there. And, I've seen it out there in normal business opportunities, but when I see it in nursing, it kind of makes me a little bit sad, because I think of us as like a special club.
We are a special club.
Yeah, like nurses are special. We have this special sisterhood, and we take care of each other. And when I see people saying, like, oh, all you need to do is this, or the reason you're not having success is this, and you just need to get my thing. And that's not the case. I like how you talk about how you look at the individual, and it's not about, oh yeah, I want to start this business, so I'm going to show you how to start this business. It's finding something you're passionate about. Entrepreneurship is one of those things that if you don't have a passion with it, you're going to hate it. And you're going to think you hate entrepreneurship, and you don't. You hate the thing. Like you live, sleep, eat. That's all you think about. And you do it till you're totally sick of it.
It's true.
But yet it still keeps creeping back into your life, and you can't stop it. So like, if you don't want to talk about it, because people will be messaging you at all hours of the day and night and about the topic that you're known for. And if like medical cannabis, for instance, if you just think it's a way of making some quick money, and you don't really want to teach people, and you don't want to continue learning, like lifelong continual learning as an entrepreneur, you have to keep, things are always changing, and you got to keep up with it. And if you don't want to learn the newest information, then how are you going to grow as a business? It's not like you just make it one time. And an entrepreneur does not create something one time, stick it out there, and then just go to live on the beach and never do anything again.
Yeah, that's a myth too. And that's what we were talking about yesterday, because I have a bunch of concierge nurses in a group, and we meet every Tuesday. And, we were talking about doing a mastermind for concierge nurses. And some of them were like, well, what if they become our competition? And I said, well, they're going to become your competition regardless. The question is, do you want to train the next group of people?
Right.
I said, you can never start a business and then say, oh, this is great, I'm going to sit back and watch all the money pour in, because somebody's always going to come up behind you and do something better. And if you're not constantly evolving and changing and solving new problems, then your business will disappear. So then this is a short-term investment that you're doing.
So what is the person who reaches out to you that you feel like you can help the best? What does that person look like?
So I'll tell you the type of nurses that come to me, particularly, they tend to have about 20 years experience, and 20 plus for sure. And they've had it in multiple different areas. So they'll say, I worked ED, I worked OB, I worked OR, outpatient, I did all these things. I've got 20 degrees just like me, and I'm an introvert. I'm like, you sound just like me. And they'll say, I don't know what to do. And that's where, that's the part that I love. I love talking to them about what it is that they do, and, what's their personality like, what are, and I just sit there and ask them questions and listen to what they have to say. And they'll say something, and it triggers me to think of something. So for instance, I had one student who came, and this was just this past December, and she told me she wanted to be a health coach. And I said, okay. So we got on the phone, and we were talking for a little bit, and she's talking about health coaching, and her voice is just kind of like neutral, whatever. And then I asked her something, and I don't know how we got on the topic, but it was about technology, and her voice changed. And I was like, oh, you really like technology? And she's like, oh yeah. And then she got like really animated and excited. And I was like, well, why don't we go down this path, because you seem to be really excited about technology. So at this point, she is now my systems director, and is creating funnels for nurses in their business, and is doing extremely well, just creating systems for various healthcare businesses. And it's a 180 from nurse health coaching, which is what she told me she wanted in the first place. But I would put her in that category of somebody who wanted to start a business but had no idea what it was that she really wanted.
And that seems to be your specialty, of really helping them to figure that out, which is really, I think, one of the most important steps.
Yeah. And it's really because a lot of the nurses don't know what they can do with their expertise. And there's so many angles and options that you could take. It's really just a matter about what is the audience that you want to work with and what are the problems that they're talking about so that we can solve something. And really, it's just about hanging out with people that you like and understanding their problems. And that's the approach that I really take with it.
How long have you been doing this now? How long have you been working with nurses and helping them to create their own businesses?
So the business itself started in 2015. So it's been about 5 years now. But yeah, I mean, even when I was in high school, I wanted to be like a career counselor. So I've been doing it my whole life.
Funny how that comes and turns onto itself, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think this is a great place to end for today. I really am excited to hear how you help nurses to really find that thing that they're passionate about, and not just, I want to start a business, and then you just take them down this path and say, okay, here are the 3 choices. Which one do you want to do? But actually finding something that they're passionate about so that they can actually succeed in it. If there's somebody that's listening that would be interested in learning more about you or possibly working with you, what should they do?
Well, they should definitely go to my website, catieharris.com. And right there is the Nursepreneurs Guide, which will list 100 plus different nurse businesses, their websites, everything that they're doing, just their mission. And it will inspire. So if you don't know what a nurse can do, that's a guide where you can just learn what it is that they do. And once you're on my email list, I send out weekly, sometimes I get lazy, but bi-weekly emails to, let you know what's going on in Nursepreneurs. And we always have different masterminds that are coming up, or webinars and teaching and all that kind of good stuff. So it's good to be on the email list, and downloading the guide is the best way to get on it.
I know we've mentioned masterminds a couple of times, and it's not something that's common in nursing. So do you want to give your take on what your mastermind is like? Like what is a mastermind for people who don't know?
So the mastermind, the way that I use the word mastermind is just to a place, a safe place where we can work together. And, your family and friends are great, but when it comes to a business, they don't have the right perspective. So you need to be with a group that will see through, 1, your crap, and 2, when you're, afraid or you don't have the self-confidence to move forward. Whereas a family member might say, oh, why don't you stop, or, just let this go, or something along those lines. And we'll definitely tell you when to let it go. But, that's our function, is to see ahead for you. And that's really what entrepreneurialism is like pushing through walls. And you don't want to try and push down a wall that's a solid brick wall. You want to, either go around it or go over it, or just find some way to get over the obstacle. And that's what we help people to do. So in that mastermind, we work together. There's a group of about 60 of us in that group, and that's the small one. And just help each other. And a lot of my nurses are friends. We meet monthly around the country when there's not COVID. And, and then I have all the coursework that is done, and we build websites for them. We build sales funnels, and we just really support each other and the nurses in that group.
And that sounds wonderful. I think that's one of the biggest fears that nurses have is the whole selling. Nurses hate to sell. So if you do the website and the sales funnel, I'm sure that takes a lot of the apprehension away from starting a business.
Yeah, well, the sales piece, and it's funny that you say that, because it is a scary part. And I remember being scared of selling, but I also remember a mentor of mine telling me that it's not selling, it's sharing. And when you have the self-confidence in what you're giving somebody is a really good product or service that can actually help them, you do them a disservice. It's almost wrong not to tell them about it, because if you really feel like you can help that person, why wouldn't you help that person, right? So
Right.
It's kind of like a mind shift change. So that's why I don't like working with people that just want to make money fast, because I don't believe that they're in it to help somebody other than themselves.
Right. And as nurses, most of us came into the profession because we like helping other people. And one of the things that I found is nurses don't like to charge money because they think we're just supposed to, help other people and not charge anybody any money for it. But the one thing that we would never go to the hospital and work for free.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we do something else, whether it's health coach or whatever, we don't do it for free, again, because this is our time and our expertise. And sometimes you need to be around other like-minded people who can help you to understand that. And
Right.
And it isn't about making money. One of the books that I read that really helped me with my money mindset talked about certificates of appreciation. And it's like when somebody does something and you help them or they help you. It's a way of, instead of bartering back in the day and giving them a goat or a hen, instead you give them this dollar, which represents, your appreciation for helping with something. And
Right.
yeah. And I also find that men have less of a problem with this than women have.
Well, I would also add to that, there's an element of self-confidence in there that, I can just speak from my own experience, but early on in my business, like I was just really, I could give advice out for free all day and feel good about it. But when I charged somebody for it, then I felt like a fraud. Then I felt like, well, I don't know, maybe the information's not good enough, or maybe I'm not really helping them, or maybe I'm stealing money from them. So I had to go through all these like self-confidence issues, which is all part about building your business is going through mindset issues. So when I do see that now, I start to see kind of like the weakness areas or the thought process that's in that nurse's mind about what she really thinks about herself or how she feels about what she's doing. So we have to address that in order to move forward.
Which is another reason why the masterminds are so important, because you get to know each other. And then when you can see somebody pulling back, you can find out, why is it? Is it a mindset issue? Is it, what is holding them back from moving forward? Which goes back to what you said at the beginning about how it has to be something that you love and that you're passionate about, because if you're doing something that you don't believe in, you're going to have a real hard time selling it, because you don't feel like it's really worth it. You feel like you're a used car salesman selling somebody a piece of junk and trying to make it sound like it's really good. But if it's something good and something that you believe in, you want to get the word out and you want to let others know about it.
Yeah. And I would say most problems in business are personal problems. They're not business problems. Business is very straightforward. Get a problem, solve it, put it in front of people. Everything in between is a personal problem.
I've never heard it put that way, but I really love that. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is all what's in between our ears. Wonderful. Okay. Well, we're going to have in the show notes different ways that people can get in touch with you. And we'll definitely have a link to your website where you have that resource for our listeners if they would like to learn more.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting for them to see all the different possibilities that are out there for nurses.
Yeah, there's some really amazing nurses out there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode with Catie. If you're interested in nurse entrepreneurship, be sure to take her up on her offer and download her Nurse Entrepreneur Guide with 10 case studies and over 100 successful nurse businesses that you can model. You can find this at successfulnursesinbusiness.com and on her website, catieharris.com. We'll have a link in the show notes.